get into the holiday spirit, you probably shouldn't be watching my channel in the first place, because I'm going to be talking about other things besides the holidays, shopping and everything else. So as it turns out today, um, White House spokesperson, or rather the press secretary for the White House, today blasts the New York Times presentation of the White House knowledge of the CIA tape destruction. And she says that the paper, the New York Times, will soon issue a correction. Now, I can't wait to see if they actually do that. It's entirely possible that they would. Nothing surprises me anymore. So, in other words, the article she was referring to was actually a very good article. And I'm sure that the New York Times has double-checked their sources on this. They don't just interview one source. They have many sources. And they probably put themselves out there just a little bit to put some feelers out there. But if the public doesn't stand behind that kind of article, then of course it's going to fizzle out as usual. And it doesn't help very much that the New York Times articles of this kind are now actually put behind a firewall, so that you can't really read any of this one day after it has appeared in the actual paper. Now, I'm not a subscriber to the New York Times. It's very expensive to subscribe to the New York Times, and I can't afford that. So I've basically relied up until about a year ago, when they changed this policy to, I've read their stuff online, and occasionally I get papers from a few people that I know, and they are usually a few days old. So I do get my information one way or the other. So this was the article that the White House is now complaining about. And I'll read you some excerpts of it. Hopefully this video won't be too long, but it's regarding the CIA tapes and their destruction. It's a very important article. At least 4 top White House lawyers took part in discussions with the Central Intelligence Agency between 2003 and 2005 about whether to destroy videotapes showing the secret interrogations of 2 operatives from Al-Qaeda, according to current and former administration and intelligence officials. Now, please note that, and this is my own commentary, that it is a given that these operatives were operatives of Al-Qaeda. It's not being questioned. So that is the beginning sentence right there. On the other hand, there are some good points that the New York Times is actually making. The accounts indicate that the involvement of White House officials in the discussions before the destruction of the tapes in November of 2005 was more extensive than the Bush administration has formally acknowledged. Those who took part, the officials said, included Alberto Gonzales, who served as White House counsel until early 2005, David Addington, who was the counsel to Vice President Dick Cheney and is now his chief of staff, John Bellinger III, who until January 2005 was the senior lawyer at the National Security Council, and Harriet Miers, who succeeded Mr. Gonzales as White House counsel. Now, one former senior intelligence official with direct knowledge of the matter, said that there had been vigorous sentiment among some top White House officials to destroy the tapes. The former official did not specify which White House officials took this position, but he said that some believed in 2005 that any disclosure of the tapes could have been particularly damaging after revelations a year earlier of the abuses in Abu Ghraib prison in Iraq. Some other officials assert that no one at the White House advocated destroying the tapes. Spokesman for the White House, the Vice President's office, and the CIA declined on Tuesday, so this was yesterday, to comment for this article, also citing judicial inquiries. So, we basically all know where this is going. This is a replay of the Nixon years, only much worse, much worse. Because during the Nixon years, it involved spying on your political opponents who were empowered within the party. This is now going much further. It basically denies the right to average citizens to oppose the government, and we're all being surveilled and so on. And the tapes are, of course, the tapes have been destroyed because they're evidence against wrongdoing. And I'm sure somebody's made some copies and they lie around somewhere, just like the old Nixon tapes. And at some point in history, all these tapes will turn up, rest assured. But the intimidation factor here is very great. And so let's see if the New York Times will actually back down in view of Perinos, the White House spokesperson here, whether the New York Times, as the paper of record, is actually going to back down in the face of this. I would probably assume that they will print some article of correction, some sort of a half-hearted apology, if you will. But of course, no one will read this because nobody really reads the New York Times, and their articles are not being broadcasts on the mainstream press or anything else. Essentially, people who would read the New York Times either live in New York City or they are otherwise inclined to read long articles in newspapers. And so it's not a given that the New York Times will actually acquiesce to this, but they probably will, especially since the FCC just gave them the right to acquire a further media market with television stations and so on, give and take, so to say. Anyway, you can tell I'm a bit cynical, a bit cynical at this point. So we shall see what happens, and stay tuned, and let's see if the New York Times actually retracts the article saying that four attorneys cooperating very closely with the White House have had intimate knowledge of those tapes and have ordered their destructions, essentially. I would call that obstruction of justice, just like back in the Nixon years, only much worse. Okay, well, thanks for listening. It's not Christmas yet, so I'll probably make another video before that, and I'm not a big Christmas person, so I probably will make videos even during Christmas. So good night to everyone, and keep up the good spirit and a spirit of resistance against what is going on. Thank you so much. Good night.